is Rock and Roll Grad School with your hosts Heidi Hedquist and Luke Poling. First-time callers, long-time listeners.
Hello, kiddies. And hey, Heidi, fun fact. Daft Punk is playing at my house.
Really?
Never mind. It was funny when it occurred to me this morning. I was like, oh, this would be because, like the song.
Yes, I do.
Yes. I didn't want to explain the punchline, but
it's okay. Although our
thank you.
mothers, or one of our mothers, did tell us that we should explain a little bit more for those who may not have the vast knowledge of
Right.
whatever
Do you
we
think
know.
that's their way of saying, like, don't be too cute?
No. We could never be
No.
too cute.
But you know what I mean?
Think
Like,
they think we're cute. I think they think we're
oh,
I think they think that we just expect everyone to have wasted their brain cells on all the knowledge we have wasted ours on.
right. Maybe it's not that they think we're being cute. I think it's that they think that we think we're being cute.
That's probably more accurate.
Yeah.
That seems right. That seems actually right. But they did say we should explain more.
So this week we talked to Nicky Siano.
Yes.
Your new best friend.
Oh my gosh, I love him so much. I can't even handle it. I love him. I loved him before we met him. I love him even more after we met him. I love that I have had communications with him beyond that.
And a little bit of the inside podcast thing. When we reached out to him, we were kind of reminded of him because of the Bee Gees documentary, and he appears in that. And we reached out to him about his time as DJ at Studio 54. And he sort of wrote back saying, like, I'm kind of Studio 54'd out. Is there anything else you want to talk about? And when you dig deeper into his story, Studio 54 is the least interesting thing about him and his career and what he achieved. So it's fascinating. And I think this is me. I keep vacillating between wishing I had been in New York in the 70s for all the things going on, all of the music, all of the art. And then the part of me that's like, no, I just would have been scared.
Oh, we wouldn't have been friends. This wouldn't have happened.
Yes.
I would have been full force, sucked in. I would have been out every night. I would have loved it. I would have been wearing Halston, even though if I didn't have the money for it, I would have stolen it. I would have been coked out. I would have been dancing at the club. I would have been at the gallery. I would have been everywhere. And Nicky, the thing that would be the same is Nicky would still be my friend.
Yes.
And yes, I would have also been at CBGB's. I would have been both. I would have done them both.
Wow. Okay. Uptown and downtown girl. Let's go back to 1972. You've DJ'd.
My favorite year, baby.
So you're 17 and you design, co-own, and DJ at the gallery. At 17, what were the things that you were looking for from all the other clubs you'd been to where you're like, this doesn't work. Let me show you how it should be?
Not many. There weren't a lot of clubs. Okay. I was talking to someone yesterday and you said, and you know, by 75, there were about 1,000 maybe clubs in New York City. In 72, there were 10.
Wow.
So there wasn't much to look at. And a lot of it was just instinct. And I was a devotee of the absolute best environment to dance in at that time, which was the Loft. There was no better place. And I learned a few things. Sound is better in an enclosed room without open walls around you, and lighting is better in an enclosed room without the lighting from other areas intruding on the light show that you're watching. because if you want to experience darkness, experience it in a closed room, not with the bar over there gleaming, and the tables over there with people laughing. You know, you were in a pair of headphones in your room with the door closed. That's the loft. And it was not much bigger than that either. I mean, the whole loft at that time was 2,000 square feet. So it wasn't a very large space. And so I learned there. That was the first. I went to a place called the Firehouse, where I went to a lot because I was 15. There weren't many places I could get into. The Firehouse was one, the Loft was another. Then as I started to go to those two places, I started to look older for some reason. I guess just the style sort of wore off. I started looking at, oh, look what they're wearing, and going out and buying those clothes. And my friend Robin and I, who we did everything together, and she loved to dance and I loved to dance, and so we went out dancing as much as we could. I was at the Loft every Saturday night from 1970, when he opened in February. The first time I was there was October, and I was there every Saturday night until Gallery opened. And he wasn't open when we opened because he had closed for the summer to go away. And that's how we picked up a whole crowd. That's why we became so successful so quickly, which wasn't a problem for him because he had a waiting list of about 3,000 people that he wasn't sending out because he couldn't fit them in the space. I hate David would kill me if he heard me calling it a club. It was his house, and it truly was his house. He lived there. His bedroom was above the DJ booth. He had a DJ booth, and above it was about 4-foot high space where his bed was, and that's where he slept. And you would go into the bathroom and you'd see his shaver and his deodorant and all the little things that you would see in someone's bathroom, his toothbrush and everything. And you felt like you were at a house party. And that's how he treated it, like a house party.
Wow.
So what was the question?
How did you go from being there and soaking it all up to, at that age, kind of to our earlier conversation, having the wherewithal and the fortitude to open the Gallery and have it become this huge success? Like, who does that at that age?
There are people in music in a lot of different fields who started at a very young age. There are people who really know what they want. I mean, when I realized I wanted to be a DJ when I was 16 years old, it didn't happen right away. When I was 16 years old, and I was at the Loft, but I had been there before, and I'll tell you exactly what happened. Girl, You Need to Change Your Mind, which is a classic club record, was on. And it came to the big break where the lights usually go out. And the lights in the room went out. But at the end of the room, there were 2 chairs with a table between them with a lamp on the chairs. Have you heard this before?
Mm-mm.
No.
Never.
Okay. So there was a little table with 2 chairs and there was a lamp on the chairs. So the lights went out, but there was a light on that table. And I sort of was staring at the lights. And then Girl, You Need to Change takes another little breakdown, and I watch, and that light dimmed out. It didn't just go out. It dimmed out. And then the air conditioner came on and started blowing on me. It hadn't been on before that. So right then, at that moment, that's when I said, I want to do this. It wasn't about just playing records. It was about creating atmosphere.
Yes.
Atmosphere where you felt safe,
Sure.
wanted, and where excitement was an endless peak that we were still creating other elements to reach and re-reach. So I that night that I decided I want to be a party giver, a space designer. Um, Now, everything else that happened was fortuitous. My brother had just settled an accident, um, a legal thing where he settled a lawsuit in an accident that he was in, and he had $10,000 to spare. That's what we needed to open the club. We put together a proposal, not knowing he had this money. Robin and I sat down after that night and did a proposal. And first, we walked around Chelsea, and we always saw little signs hanging up saying space for rent, space for rent. So we started asking people, your space, yeah, we got 3 floors empty. And yeah, I think the rent is like $375 a month for the one that's 3,500 square feet, and then there's one a little smaller. I think it's 300 a month. Okay, so we started factoring in those expenses. Then we called and saw how much food was. Then we figured in the admission price, and we realized that for very little admission price, we can provide a really nice, entertaining night for people. And then we came across the sound system, and we had already convinced my brother to do this. We rented the space, we started building, and hadn't picked the sound system yet. Robin and I were always out, and at the time, Alex Rosner, who really was the only sound guy for clubs in 1971, Richard Long was not around yet. And those were the 2 big guys in the 70s, Alex Rosner, and then Richard Long far exceeded him and became the leader because he built his own speakers, which was a real important element. But Alex Rosner at that time had these power strips in the booth that said Rosner Custom Sound, and everything plugged into the back of them. But all you saw from like outside the booth was that little strip, and it said Rosner Custom Sound on it. And Robin and I saw it over and over, saw it at the Loft, saw it at the Limelight, the first Limelight on 7th Avenue South, not the one that was opened by Peter Gation. This one was before that.
Yeah.
And then we saw some other club, and they all said Rosner Custom Sound. And one night we went roller skating at Rockefeller Center, and we're roller skating around, and we had just rented the space, and we were talking, Robin and I, about who should we get to do the sound. And we could build it ourselves. I mean, I knew a lot about sound already. I bought my first little sound system at 13 from my paper route money. I was possessed. I had to have it. It had to sound, not only be there, but sound good. And I got something really quality for back then at that time, a thing called the Zenith Circle of Sound speakers. And they were speakers that were round, and they had a kind of upside down cone in them. So when the speaker pushed out, it pushed out all around the room, depending on where it was situated. So we finish skating, we go back to the booth, put away our sneakers. I turn around and I look at the big amplifiers on the wall, and at the bottom I see Rosner Custom Sound. And I said, Robin, this is fate. This is telling us what to do. So we called Alex, and he came over, and he looked at the place, and he said, I have the greatest idea. There were window cutouts in the wall but the windows were gone because all the buildings were built right next door to each other, and you couldn't, there was nothing out the window, but there was that cutout, and it was like a foot deep, at least, maybe a foot and a couple of inches. He said, these window recesses are perfect for Altec Lansing voice of the theater speakers. They'll fit right in these canals, and they will sound louder because of the reflection that this little opening will create. Because when you put a speaker in a corner, you get more sound because of reflection. And then we were like, oh, this is great. So remember, $10,000 we have.
Right.
Okay. And then, oh, Alex, how much would this be? Everything installed, 700. No, $7,100. So Joe and Robin and I had a very long meeting, and we got Alex down to 6,500, and we decided to go with him because sound was if people were going out to dance, then sound had to be the best thing and most expensive thing in the room. Had to be. They were there to dance. So they were there to hear music. The sound had to be good.
Yeah.
And I think people have totally missed that. They're here to drink. They're here to meet someone. No, these people were there to dance. Yes. The music was new. There wasn't yet the word disco on the scene, and people were craving to dance. Right now, it's happening again. People are calling me up and going, if I just had a place to dance, it would get some of this energy that I've been feeling and this frustration that I've been feeling out.
Yes, that is literally what I've been saying through the whole pandemic, is I just want to go dancing. I hadn't been dancing in a while, but all I want to do is go dancing. That's it.
You're not alone.
Glad to know I have people out there.
March 13th is my birthday.
I know.
We're doing a really unique kind of online thing where we're encouraging people to have a few people at their house and a little party at their house. And we're using Zoom so people can interact and talk to each other and even have individual conversations. And then we're using Twitch for the sound so that the sound is uninterrupted and really good, high quality feed. So I've done it before and it really works incredibly.
I already told Luke I'm getting my ticket to the party. That was like the first thing I said to him today. I'm like, I'm buying a ticket. I'm going to this party. So you will see me there.
Cool. You are
It's
welcome.
so interesting.
Everyone is so interesting. Oh. Go ahead.
It's so interesting to hear you talk about the amount of time and effort and energy you put into good speakers, which when you say it and when you explain it, it makes all the sense in the world. Because when you're saying it's about making a mood, it's about creating a situation that everyone is really not even comfortable. They're having a good time. If the sound sucks, then let's go someplace else. And how early, I know at some point you had different record labels handing you records or calling you up and playing you records. The MFSB, is that right? Mother of Fathers, the Sound of Philadelphia record. Yeah. When did the labels start to be like, oh, these guys can really break something? They can get something out there and get it popularized super quick.
About 8 months after we opened. So we opened in June, I'd say just before Christmas. We were in like Flint, but that whole summer we were I made really good friends with David Rodriguez and Michael Capello, who were the two DJs at that Limelight place. David Rodriguez was on Monday and Tuesday, and Michael was every other night. And so I made really good friends with David, and he knew one place that he could get records from Buddha. And I think that we got Who Is He and What Is He to You? And we started playing that, and it became a big sales for them. And they started, whatever you want, Nicky, whatever you want, David. Oh, give me an extra, an extra Gladys Knight, even though I don't need it. Give me an extra one. Maybe I'll sell it down the line or something. And David would just say this to them. It was wild. And they were like, sure, here you go. And then there was a little offbeat record called Giving Up. Giving Up by Zulema. And that again, sales. Like within a month of us starting to play that record, 150,000 in sales, which is a lot these days. But back then, it was just a piss in the bucket. But it was enough to make them turn their heads and say, you guys are doing something, because this didn't get any radio play. None. Anywhere, ever. Then this was the big block, the big link in the chain that made getting records easier for us. Billy Smith, who was a big promoter of basically live venues and live performances, came on board with 20th Century Fox as their promoter. And he said, he came to the gallery, he went to the Limelight, he went to all the clubs that were hot. And there weren't many. Like I said, there were about 10 that year before everything else opened in 73. And he came up to the booth and he said, hi, Nicky, I'm Billy Smith. He gave me his card. I said, I can't talk right now. He said, yeah, here's my card. I'll give you free records anytime you want. Just come to my office. David also got his card because David was always at the gallery, and he was there that night and talked to Billy extensively. And that week we went over to Billy's place. I'll never forget it. It was on, I think, 13th Avenue and 42nd Street, or 38th Street and 13th Avenue. It was all the way west. So we get there, and it's a record distributor. It's not really a record company. His office was in the basement among floor to ceiling racks of vinyl everywhere. So this was a distributor. So they were selling music for major labels and everyone. But he couldn't give us any of that because he didn't work for them. But he brought us to a section, Brunswick. I'll never forget it, Brunswick. And we had a song called By the Shy Lights. Stoned Out of My Mind was the name of the song. And we loved that song. And we can use an extra of that, it had. And then there was another one on Realistic. Oh, that was from Buddha, called How Can I Forget? And so anyway, we're down there and we're talking to him, and he's saying, here, take this. Barbara Acklin, I'll Bake Me a Man. He gave us that little tiny record that sort of made some noise. And then we look down on the floor and we see this album cover, 2 album covers, one with this big, heavy set black guy on it, and one with 3 girls with these big Afro wigs. Now, Afro wigs weren't really in style then. It kind of was chintzy chic. And David looked down at that and he said, boy, that album cover looks interesting. What's that? He says, we're throwing those away. They haven't done anything in the last year. And we said, and David said, give me a copy. I'll just hang it on my wall. I said, well, you might as well give me a copy too, because if something good is on there. And he said, here, take 3 of those and 3 of the fat guy. And Barry White and Love Unlimited were the names of the albums. And we went home and we heard Love's Theme by Love Unlimited Orchestra, and we started playing it. It went to number 135 on the charts without any airplay. And that's when all the record companies said, these people are doing something. Because we had doors slammed in our face. CBS, or what Sony Music now, CBS had a place where DJs could come and get records in Queens. So we take the train all the way out to Queens, little door in somewhere in Jamaica, and the door opens. They say, "Yes, can we help you?" And so, "We're DJs. We're here to get records." "Oh, okay. What radio stations are you with?" "We're club DJs." Boom, door in our face. And she said before, I got to give her credit. She did say before she slammed the door in our face, "We don't service club DJs."
Well,
Boom.
fine.
Well, that never happens after Love Theme.
Yeah, big mistake.
And a lot of Soul Makossa, another one that someone told me there was a song they heard called Soul Makossa. I went to Brooklyn where a white person didn't go on Flatbush Avenue in 1972 and bought every copy they had of this record, Soul Makossa, without ever hearing it, got it home and realized I had 9 copies. I gave them to all of my friends. That record was the biggest record in New York. Atlantic signed them right away, and they went to radio and became, I think it went top 10.
Unreal.
So record after record, Rock Your Baby, Rock the Boat. I even down to Turn the Beat Around, Love Hangover. I was the first person to play all of those. I Feel Love. It was quite a ride. Chez La Femme.
Amazing. I mean, everything, all of them.
Yeah.
It's unreal.
And on top of it all, what we got, instead of getting the tie boxes filled with $100 bills that radio used to get, we got a limousine to their thank you party with mushrooms and the band there and 100 people that I didn't know.
Wow.
That was Chez La Femme on the west side along Central Park West, an apartment filled with people and all these weird things on the table. And I had just smoked something where everything tasted like rubber to me. And that's what we got as a thank you for selling millions of records.
Wow.
So you had this great experience of playing all these records and introducing people to this music that has become the soundtrack to so much of their lives and so many good memories for them. But then the other thing that's fascinating about your work is the way you mixed with the treble and the bass, adding a third turntable to put in sound effects, and even the idea of beat matching, which nowadays seems like it's one of those things where
a
you just assume
non-brainer, right?
Exactly, that this just was always there.
No, we thought of it, but the equipment was very limited. I mean, I had Thorin's TD 125s, I think, or 124s or 125s, and they didn't have a direct drive. For people who don't know, when you're slip cueing, you have to hold the record and the table has to keep spinning, and direct drive will keep that table spinning. But if you have it driven by a rubber band, which is what, the Thorins were driven by, that shit would just it would slow down. It would slow the table down and you wouldn't be able to beat match.
Oh my God.
So what my friends were always saying to me, make sure the blend is like you could dance through it, maybe, sort of. So we knew that was going to be the answer. And we knew that not to play a really fast song after a really slow song. Now today, beat matching is like a non-brainer and so easy because all the records are the same tempo,
Right.
about between 126 and 128.
Mhm.
Here we are playing things at 88 BPMs all the way up to 136 BPMs. And a lot of shit right smack dab in the middle,
Yeah.
as they say, at about 114, which is 115, 116, Dr. Love, Love is the Message. All those songs were right in that little pocket. So I'm blending, right? And I decide to try and hold the record a little bit. And I'm saying, how could I do this? And all of a sudden it came to me, put a 45 underneath the album and see that would slip it on top. And I think David was a part of that. He said, yeah, put a 45 under there, see if it'll slip better. And sure enough, that kept the table turning while I was able to hold the LP and let it go. And so we were kind of, oh, here, it's easier to do a good blend. And then all of a sudden it came to me, no, we should match the beat exactly on this. And we can do it. But I couldn't do it on for every record on the turntables I had, because the pitch variance was maybe 3-4% in one direction and 2% in the other direction, whereas Thorin's, which basically took over the whole thing, was 10% in each direction. So they were able to really vary the speed of the records. But I don't believe in that even today. I don't put a really fast record next to a really slow record
Mhm.
and change the speed so drastically that it becomes a different record completely.
I agree.
And my idea is that if the producer would have wanted it at that speed, they would have put it at that speed. If you're changing the speed 10% or more, then you might as well play a different record, because that's what you're getting.
Yeah.
So I started doing that, and then I bought a piece of felt. My mother was a seamstress, so I knew about materials, and I started slipping. And I had to do it very gingerly because of the turntables that I had, but I knew it was the right thing to do. And I got better and better. And Richie Kazar, who was the DJ at a place called Hollywood, which initially was the Peppermint Lounge, but
Okay.
Hollywood was the place I would go during the week after, when the limelight sort of cooled down a little bit. We went to Hollywood on Sunday. I played on Friday and Saturday, and I went to Hollywood on Sunday to hear Richie Kazar. And he had Thorins also, but what he had were TD 126s, and they were direct drive. So he started slip queuing, and everything was matching. And that's where I took it to the next level, where I started doing that. So it was a sort of like, the monkey story, where one monkey on an island in Borneo started washing their coconuts, and then another monkey in Borneo started washing, and then all the monkeys all over the world started washing their coconuts. It was just a telepathic communication that the time was right for that evolution to happen. As far as the third turntable, that was downright, just plain and simple, a dream I had. I was dreaming, and the big record, my biggest record, Love is a Message, was playing. Not Love is a Message, Girl, You Need to Change Your Mind was playing. And I had this sound effect of this jet plane that I always play over Love is a Message playing, and I was mixing into Love is a Message. So three things were going on at once. And I was like, well, I woke up and I said, Robin, I got to bring in my turntable to the club. And I brought in my turntable that night, and I plugged it in, and I was all ready to do it, and it didn't work. And I called Rosner up and I said, this doesn't work. And he says, that's because we have to change the card inside the mixer. It's an auxiliary card, and you have to change it from an auxiliary to a phono. In other words, it was for a tape deck or something like that, that output. And you literally had to open up the Bozak mixer. I was the third Bozak sold.
Wow.
In the United States. The third or fourth sold in the United States.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
It's fantastic. I just want to be there.
There's a lot of, you know what? A lot of people would have benefited from being there because it wasn't only about dancing. It was having a message and telling people that message. It was spreading the word, because when I opened, there was a war going on.
Oh, yeah.
And a year later, they signed the peace treaty. And almost a year to a day of the release of Marvin Gaye's What's Going On album. And I know that if any record had anything to do with stopping the war, that album did. And you asked me, 17, Luke, it comes down to just inspiration. If God is telling you this is your path, as Marvin Gaye said when he was asked about what's going on, he said, God wrote it. You know, it just, and I always tell people who are playing records, your first thought is God and inspiration. Everything else after that is your ego. So play what your first thought is. Just go with it. And that's how I play too. I just listen and I'm open. And people say, wow, I'm thinking of a song and he always plays it right after I'm thinking. That's because we're all hearing the same thing.
You can follow us on all the various socials. You can check out our website at rockandrollgradschool.com for more grad school content. And please leave us a review on iTunes. We're tired of asking our family members to do so.
Today's show was produced by myself and Heidi Hedquist. Our reluctant executive producers are John Sove and Sandy Stone. Our willing producers are Rachel Allen and Randy Jeanette. Our intern is Zach Jackson. Our graphic designer is Samantha Mastonen. This one's for Philippe. Thank you, good night, and may all your favorite bands stay together.